Long ago, in a peaceful valley surrounded by green hills, there was a kingdom. The kingdom was ruled by a wise and gentle queen named Helena. The people loved her, and she made sure that everyone in the kingdom had enough food, good work, and safety. Her palace was beautiful, made of shining stone, and it stood on a hill that looked over the whole valley. Queen Helena was a good ruler, but there was something that troubled her. She had no children of her own. As the queen grew older, she began to worry about who would take her place and rule the kingdom when she was no longer able. There were many advisors around her, but none seemed strong enough or wise enough to be the next ruler. She was unsure who would continue her work and protect her kingdom. In a small village near the palace, there lived a boy named Aaron. He was a young farm boy who spent his days helping his father in the fields, taking care of animals, and doing chores around the house. Aaron was a hard worker, always willing to help others, whether it was carrying water for his elderly neighbor or planting seeds in the soil. He loved the peacefulness of his village, but in his heart, he dreamed of something more. He dreamed of one day leaving his village and seeing the kingdom that lay beyond the hills. He wondered what it would be like to serve the queen and help her rule the land. Aaron had a quiet strength about him. He was kind and brave, even though he wasn't very tall or strong in the way some people might expect. It was his courage and heart that made him stand out among the other children. He had a good heart, and all the other children in the village looked up to him. They knew that if they ever needed help, Aaron would be there. One evening, as the sun began to set, Aaron was walking through the village, carrying some fresh bread to his neighbor. He saw children playing in the distance, running and laughing. Aaron smiled to himself. Life in the village was simple, but sometimes he wished he could see more of the world, maybe even serve the queen. He had heard many stories about the palace and its beautiful gardens. While walking, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw a woman approaching. She was dressed in fine clothing, and her face looked familiar. Aaron had seen her in the village before, though she usually didn't talk to the villagers. It was Queen Helena. "Hello, young man," the queen said, smiling warmly. Her voice was soft, but carried an air of kindness. "I see you are delivering bread. That's a very kind thing to do." Aaron was surprised to see her. He had never expected to meet the queen up close. He bowed his head out of respect. "Your Majesty, it's a small favor," he said. "I just wanted to help a neighbor." Queen Helena smiled at him, impressed by his humility. "Your kindness is rare, Aaron. I have heard many things about you." Aaron blinked in surprise. "You have?" Your Majesty." "Yes," the queen said. "The people in the village speak highly of you. They say you are always willing to help and never ask for anything in return. That is a rare quality." Aaron felt his face turn red. He didn't think of himself as anything special. "I just do what I can." The queen looked at him for a moment, her eyes thoughtful. "I believe you will do great things one day," she said quietly. "I'm glad to have met you, Aaron." The queen's words made Aaron feel proud, though he didn't fully understand what she meant. He stood there for a moment, watching as she turned and walked away, her guards following closely behind. He felt a strange warmth inside him. Maybe, one day, he would get the chance to serve the queen and help her with the kingdom. The next day, news spread through the village like wildfire. Queen Helena had visited, and she had spoken to Aaron. The villagers were excited, and Aaron found himself the center of attention. But he didn't mind. He was happy that the queen had noticed him, even if it was just for a moment. That evening, as he worked on the farm, his father noticed that Aaron seemed distracted. "What's on your mind, son?" his father asked, wiping his brow. Aaron paused and looked up at the sky. "The queen spoke to me today." His father's eyes widened. "She spoke to you? What did she say?" Aaron smiled. "She said that I would do great things one day." His father chuckled softly. "Well, it seems she believes in you. But remember, son, greatness is not always about being noticed by others. It's about the things you do when no one is looking." Aaron nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something special might be waiting for him. He wasn't sure what it was, but he felt it deep in his heart. As the days passed, Queen Helena grew weaker. Her health continued to decline, and she began to worry more about the future of her kingdom. Her advisors, a group of men who helped her make decisions, began to talk among themselves. They had their own plans. One of the advisors, a man named Marlowe, suggested that they should choose a new leader quickly, before it was too late. "We cannot leave the kingdom without a ruler," he argued. Another advisor, Leontius, agreed, but had a different idea. "There is a boy in the village," he said, "Aaron. He is clever and strong. He could be the one we choose." But Marlowe shook his head. "No, he is just a farm boy. We must choose someone with power, someone who can protect the kingdom from outside threats." The advisors continued to argue, but deep down, Marlowe felt threatened by Aaron. He didn't want a young boy, especially one with the people's affection, to become a rival for the throne. In secret, Marlowe decided to take action. He spoke with the other advisors and came up with a plan. They would send Aaron far away from the kingdom, making sure he could never return to challenge them. They decided to write a letter telling Aaron that the queen needed him to deliver an important message to a far-off city. It was a trick, a way to get rid of him. The next day, Aaron received the letter. It was sealed with the queen's mark. He couldn't believe it. This was the moment he had dreamed of. The queen had asked for his help. Excited, Aaron packed a small bag with food and water, then set off on his journey to the distant city. He didn't know the road would be long and filled with challenges. He thought it would be a simple trip, but the journey was harder than he imagined. Along the way, he met people who were kind and helpful. One of them was a merchant named Thomas, who gave him advice on how to travel safely. Thomas was a friendly man with a big heart. As they traveled together, Thomas shared stories about his life and the places he had been. "Why are you going to the city?" Thomas asked one evening as they sat by a fire. Aaron smiled, holding up the letter. "I have been asked to deliver this to the Queen's agents in the city. It's an important task." Thomas looked at the letter carefully, and his expression changed. "You're sure this is from the Queen?" he asked. Aaron nodded. "It has the Queen's seal." Thomas hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I think you should be careful, Aaron. Sometimes people use letters to trick others." Aaron felt a chill run down his spine. Could the Queen's advisors be plotting against him? He hadn't thought of that. But Thomas's words made him doubt. Aaron's journey was just beginning, and he didn't know yet that his life would change forever. As the days passed, Aaron's journey grew harder. The road to the city was long and tiring. Sometimes the weather turned cold, and other times it was unbearably hot. Aaron felt a growing concern about the letter he had received. Thomas, the merchant he had met, had warned him, and now Aaron couldn't help but wonder if something was wrong. Thomas had become a good friend, always offering advice and sharing what little food he had. The two of them walked together for many days, talking about their lives and the things they wanted to do. Thomas had been all over the kingdom, but he never stayed in one place for long. He loved the freedom of traveling and meeting new people. One evening, as they sat by a campfire, Aaron decided to show Thomas the letter. "I've been asked to deliver this to the Queen's agents in the city," Aaron said, holding up the sealed letter. "It's very important. It came from the Queen herself." Thomas carefully looked at the letter, his eyes scanning the royal seal. He ran his fingers over the paper. "This doesn't look like the Queen's usual handwriting," Thomas said thoughtfully. "I know the Queen has a unique way of writing, and this, well, it's different." Aren's heart skipped a beat. Could it be true? Could the letter really be a trick? "What do you think I should do?" Aren asked, feeling confused. Thomas paused for a moment, then said, "We need to be careful. There might be people who want to use you for their own plans. I suggest we go to the city, but we should find out more about the letter and who really sent it." Aren nodded. "You're right. I can't be too sure." The next morning, they set off again, but now Aren's thoughts were clouded with doubt. He had trusted the letter because it had come from the Queen's advisors. But now Thomas's words echoed in his mind. What if they were trying to trick him? He had to find out the truth. After days of traveling, Aren and Thomas finally reached the city. It was much bigger than the small village where Aren had grown up. The streets were crowded with people, and tall stone buildings lined the roads. Aren couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed. They went straight to the place where the Queen's agents were supposed to be. Aren showed the letter to one of the men who worked there, but the man's face changed when he saw it. "This is not from the Queen," the man said sternly, folding the letter back up. "You've been tricked." Aren's stomach dropped. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had trusted the letter, trusted that it was real. But now, everything seemed uncertain. "What do you mean?" Aren asked, his voice shaking. "Someone wants to send you away from the kingdom," the man explained. "This letter is part of a plan to get rid of you. There are people in the palace who are afraid of you. They think you might become a threat to the throne." Aren felt a mix of confusion and anger. How could they think that about him? He was only trying to help the Queen. "The Queen needs to know about this," Aren said firmly. "I have to go back. I need to tell her the truth." Thomas nodded. "I'll help you get back to the kingdom." Without wasting any more time, Aren and Thomas left the city and began the long journey back to the valley. But this time, Aren wasn't just going home. He was going to fight for the truth. He would make sure the Queen knew about the deceitful plot against him. Days later, Aren and Thomas returned to the kingdom. It had been a long and difficult journey, but Aren's determination grew stronger with every step. He knew he had to get to the Queen and tell her everything. He couldn't let the advisors succeed in their plot. When they arrived at the palace gates, Aren went straight to the Queen's chamber. The guards tried to stop him, but Thomas stepped forward and explained that Aren had important news. After a brief conversation, the guards allowed them inside. The Queen was sitting by a window, looking out over the kingdom. Her face was pale, and she looked weary. But when she saw Aren, her eyes brightened, and she stood up. "Aren, You've returned, she said softly. I didn't expect you so soon. Aaron bowed deeply. Your Majesty, I have something important to tell you. The letter I received, it wasn't from you. I was tricked by your advisors. They want to send me away. The Queen looked shocked, but she didn't say anything right away. She motioned for Aaron to sit, and Tomas joined them. Tell me everything, the Queen said. Aaron explained the events of the past few days, how he had been given the letter, how Thomas had helped him, and how they had discovered the truth. The Queen listened carefully, her face growing more serious with every word. When Aaron finished, she sat silently for a moment, her mind clearly working through the situation. Finally, she spoke. I never meant for this to happen. I trusted my advisors, but now I see that they have betrayed me. And worse, they have tried to use you, a loyal boy, to take control of the kingdom. Aaron's heart ached. He never wanted power. He only wanted to help. Your Majesty, Aaron said, his voice full of honesty. I don't want the throne. I just want to serve you. I care for this kingdom. The Queen looked at Aaron with a mixture of sadness and admiration. I see that now. You have shown great courage and loyalty. It is rare to find someone like you. After a long pause, the Queen made her decision. I have no children of my own, she said softly. But I believe you are the one who should take my place. You have the heart of a true leader. Aaron was stunned. He never imagined that the Queen would adopt him as her heir, but it felt right. He had always dreamed of helping her and serving the kingdom, and now he was given the chance to lead. In a grand ceremony, Aaron was officially adopted by Queen Helena. The people of the kingdom gathered to witness this important moment. Aaron stood before them, dressed in the royal robes, as the Queen placed a crown on his head. You are now my heir, the Queen said. You will lead this kingdom with kindness and wisdom. I know you will make us all proud. The crowd cheered, and Aaron felt a mix of joy and responsibility. He wasn't just a farm boy anymore. He was now the ruler of the kingdom, with all the challenges and duties that came with it. As Aaron looked out over the crowd, he saw the faces of the people who had supported him, who had trusted him. He promised himself that he would honor their trust and rule with the same kindness and strength that had brought him this far. Under Aaron's rule, the kingdom flourished. He worked hard to keep peace and make sure everyone had enough to eat and a safe place to live. He always remembered the lessons he had learned: kindness, honesty, and courage. And he made decisions that were best for the people. The kingdom grew strong and united, and the Queen's legacy lived on through Aaron. He had become the leader he had always dreamed of being, but he never forgot the simple life he had left behind. He made sure to listen to the needs of the people and to care for the land as his father had taught him. Aaron ruled wisely, and under his leadership, the kingdom became a place of peace and happiness for all.